A city without a single weapon. No walls, no fortress, no mass grave. In 2600 BCE, along the banks of a river we now call the Indus, 500,000 people lived together in grid-patterned streets, and archaeologists have found times that suggest they ever prepared for war. Their neighbors in Mesopotamia built ziggurats and armies. Egypt constructed pyramids and pharaohs. But this civilization built something stranger: public toilets, street-side trash collection, and a writing system that has never been decoded. Then, around 1900 BCE, every single city was abandoned. Within a single generation, one of the largest empires on Earth vanished so completely that for 3,700 years, no one remembered it existed. We are talking about the Harappan Civilization, the forgotten empire that should have ruled the world. Between the fertile plains of modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, a network of cities flourished for nearly 700 years. Mohenjo-Daro housed perhaps 40,000 people. Harappa, its twin capital, dominated the trade routes that stretched from Mesopotamia to the Persian Gulf. The civilization controlled an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia times combined. At its peak, no other civilization on Earth matched its urban sophistication. Their brick houses stood 3 stories high. Their drainage systems remained functional until the 20th century. Their standardized weights and measures suggest a centralized administration. Yet despite their achievements, no monument marks their kings. No royal tomb has ever been found. No mummy, no golden burial mask. Just cities, hundreds of them spread across an area the size of Western Europe. Who ruled this empire? We have no idea. The first Westerner to encounter these ruins was a British railroad engineer named Charles Masson. In 1826, he was wandering through the deserts near modern Malton when a local guide mentioned strange mounds covered in ancient bricks. Masson climbed the largest mound and found something extraordinary. A city laid out in perfect geometric grids, with streets running north, south, and east-west at precise right angles. He had stumbled upon Harappa. Local villagers, he noted, had been removing bricks from the site for generations, using them to build houses and wells. They had no idea what they were dismantling. Masson sent a report to the British East India Company, but it was filed away and forgotten for 2 decades. The ancient empire slept on, buried under sand and time, waiting for someone to remember it existed. When archaeologists finally excavated Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro in the 1920s, they uncovered something that made no sense. In Mohenjo-Daro, workers discovered a raised platform now called the Citadel. Here they found the remains of what appeared to be a massive public bath, 42 meters long, lined with precisely fitted bricks and sealed with natural tar. No other civilization built anything like it for another 2,000 years. But more disturbing than the bath was what surrounded it. Evidence of sudden, violent destruction. A thick layer of ash covered the western side of the mound. Human skeletons were scattered across the streets, some in odd positions, clutching their belongings. Skeletons were found in doorways, as if people had been trying to flee. Archaeologist John Marshall would later write that Mohenjo-Daro showed clear signs of a final violent end. Yet no one could agree on who had attacked, or why, or where the inhabitants had gone. The British Archaeological Survey launched a formal investigation in 1922. Led by Sir John Marshall, the team spent years mapping the ruins. What they found defied every expectation. The Harappans had organized their cities with a precision that put modern planners to shame. Every house connected to a city-wide sewer system, every street aligned with cardinal directions. Grain warehouses held enough surplus to feed thousands through multiple years of drought. Mass graves in the Rakhigarhi cemetery contained bodies buried with copper mirrors, carnelian beads, and geometric toys, suggesting a society that valued craftsmanship and play, not conquest. But the greatest mystery remained the writing. Across thousands of small stamp seals, the Harappans had carved a script that ran left to right, right to left, and sometimes in boustrophedon, each line alternating direction. To date, no one has decoded a single word. The most haunting evidence comes not from the cities themselves, but from what people left behind. In the ruins of Dholavira, a city in modern Gujarat, archaeologists discovered something extraordinary in 2020. A signboard made of 10 large letters, each 37 centimeters tall. It was the largest Harappan inscription ever found. The letters were painted in white and red, positioned above the city's main gate, visible to anyone entering. Then, the signboard was deliberately broken into pieces and buried under the city floor. not destroyed by enemies, buried times by its own people. Why would the Harappans deliberately enter their own writing? In 2001, a team of archaeologists examined 150 human skeletons from Mohenjo Daro and found no evidence of violent trauma. No cut marks, no crushed skulls. The bodies showed no signs of battle. So what killed the city and its people if not an army? Mainstream archaeology has settled on two theories. First, climate change. Around 2500 BCE, a 200-year megadrought struck the region. Lake sediments and pollen analysis show that monsoon rains weakened for centuries. Rivers shrank. Crops failed. The surplus grain stored in Harappan warehouses ran out. Without food, cities emptied. People scattered into smaller villages, abandoning the complex infrastructure that required a large population to maintain. Second, disease. Some researchers speculate that overcrowding and poor sanitation, despite their famous drains, created conditions for epidemic outbreak. But both theories leave a troubling question unanswered. If the Harappans simply moved away, why did they never rebuild? Their descendants, the Vedic cultures that appear in Indian records centuries later, have no memory of them. No hymns, no legends, no names for the cities they must have walked through every day. Half a continent's worth of people erase themselves from history. Most textbooks treat the Harappan collapse as a gradual fade out. But a closer look at the archaeological records suggests something more abrupt. The final destruction layer at Mohenjo Daro shows ash accumulation equivalent to several days of intense burning. A study in 2018 found magnetic anomalies in the soil, evidence of high-temperature fires that reached over 1,400 degrees Celsius. This wasn't cooking fires or accidental burning. This was deliberate destruction at industrial scale. Meanwhile, the famous Harappan seals begin appearing in Mesopotamia around 2350 BCE, precisely when their own cities began to decline. Someone was trading them. Either the Harappans left, taking their goods to foreign lands, or outsiders were raiding their cities and selling the loot. Or both. Yet the mainstream narrative barely acknowledges either possibility. It speaks of climate and disease. It does not speak of fire. It does not speak of flight. Why? Consider a third theory. The Indus script was not abandoned. It was time suppressed. The deliberate burial of the Dhalavira signboard, the absence of royal monuments, the sudden silence in the archaeological record, these suggest a civilization that chose to forget itself. Some scholars propose that the Harappan collapse was not a disaster but a time's revolution, a popular uprising against a priestly class that controlled the writing system. The masses destroyed the monuments, broke the seals, and scattered to become farmers and herders, deliberately abandoning urban life. If true, the Harappans did not die. They times escaped. They chose to disappear rather than be remembered. But another interpretation exists, darker and stranger. Perhaps the Harappans were not the ones who decided their fate. Perhaps someone else erased them from history, and that someone is still out there, waiting to be found. In 2016, a satellite survey discovered a massive, previously unknown Harappan-era settlement beneath the dunes of Gujarat, 5 times larger than Mohenjo Daro. It remains unexcavated. In 2019, a team using AI algorithms found that the Indus script contains elements of Proto-Dravidian languages, suggesting the writing may finally be within reach of translation. The empire that should have ruled the world is still speaking. We simply have not learned how to listen. But here is the question that haunts every researcher who has spent their life on this mystery. If the Harappans could vanish so completely, taking their language, their gods, their kings, their very memory with them, what could we lose in the same way? What would remain of time's us in 3,700 years if every library burned, every server crashed, every written word turned to dust? The Harappans were not primitive. They were, in many ways, more advanced than the civilizations that replaced them, and they are gone. Next episode, tease. Next week on Phantom Atlas, another vanished world. Another unanswered question. Another civilization that should have been remembered. Until then, keep questioning what you've been told. Word count to 1,180 words.